PhD. Hello and welcome to the Personal PR Show. How are you?
Thanks, JFab. I'm great. I'm still waking up a little bit. It's 8 a.m. here in California, but I'm very happy to be talking to you. Like you said, it's been wonderful to get to be friends with you these past few months.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes. And okay, when I met you, I was impressed by a lot of things, which we will talk about, of course, during the course of this conversation. But I was very impressed by the fact that you are a doctor and then a doctor of organic chemistry, who you turned into being a coach, and we'll talk about what kind of coach. And I was really, really fascinated by this path, and I was fascinated, to tell you the truth, especially in this, let's say, under this aspect, I was fascinated by your personal brand. That's why I was like, oh my God, I have to have her on the show. But by the way, before we get into this, I would just like to say hi to our very loyal spectator, Chris Rich.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Chris Rich. Nice to see you again, of course. And Chris Rich, I will, as usual, I will spotlight Dr. Jessica and myself, and we will bring you into the spotlight later on when you ask one of your
just listen attentively.
Thank you so much. Awesome, because there's so much to learn from Dr. Jessica.
Can imagine.
Exactly. So here we are in the spotlight, the two Jessicas. So Dr. Jessica, yes, so thank you so much for being here today with us. And you said that you are in California right now. It's 8 a.m. in the morning. I very much envy you for that, because you can still drink coffee, whereas me, I'm now just a water at 5 p.m. and tomorrow morning at 7. Dang it. Anyway.
Said like a true Italian.
Yes, exactly. See, yeah, I don't eat pizza, but I drink coffee indeed, definitely. Yes. So, and where are you from? So we know that you are based in California, but where are you from? And what is this story? Would you like to tell us, maybe?
Sure. I grew up in the middle of nowhere, the desert of West Texas. It's all about oil and cattle and guns and God out there. There's not a whole lot. It's very isolated. It's 5 hours to any other major city. And so academics were my path out. I was always very curious. They never quite fit in there. And I love studying. I love science. I was always fascinated by, what is everything made of? Like, what is this reality? What is this water that we're swimming in? And how does everything work? So I've always been, wanting to pick things apart and study and experiment and get to the bottom of things. And so I spent 10 years as an academic research scientist. I did a PhD and a postdoctoral fellowship in chemistry and neuroscience. And then after many years of doing a lot of boundary pushing experimental things in the San Francisco Bay Area, I had like an awakening, and I went and traveled for a year. I left my career. I was like, I'm supposed to be doing something else with my life. And it was really scary and I felt a lot of shame walking away from a 10-year career in academia that I had built for so long and worked so hard in. But because I'm from a very conservative place, there were a lot of things that I was just a reflexive no to in life, like anything to do with spiritual practice or meditation or personal development work. But I finally hit a wall where I just burned out, and I said, it's time for me to stop being ruled by the voices in my head, by the critical thoughts and this inner reflexive no, and to face what I'm being afraid of, and to actually move toward things that I feel like I should move away from. It's a deep practice. So I spent a year traveling, doing lots of all the new things I could do, all different kinds of meditation, all different kinds of yoga. And I also tried neo-tantra, tantric sexuality work. And it was in a workshop there on an island in Asia where I had like this big sexual, spiritual awakening. I didn't even know what that was. I wasn't really necessarily looking for that. And I realized that I had spent so much of my life denying the feminine and like the juice and this inner power that is naturally running through my body. And it was such a healing thing to come into connection with this and to realize, like, there's a different way to relate to life than the dogmatic sinner saint metaphysics that I was raised with. And so I ended up spending 4 years living full time in a tantric spiritual community, doing lots and lots of embodied practice and deep study of non-dual classical tantra, and then also studies in neo-tantric sexuality and practice, of course. And so from there, I launched my coaching career, and started teaching all of these things that I had been learning, like shadow work, non-duality, neo-tantric sexuality, classical tantric meditation. And but I had no business training. And so I did years and years of different trainings and different coaching modalities and certifications, you know, from the International Coaching Federation and all these places, because as an academic, you know, these things matter to me, like that a person has studied and that they have a background and they have been certified in what they're teaching. And so I essentially gave myself like another degree, first in, you know, neo-tantra and tantra, and then years and years of study of holding space for people. And I find that now what I do is a different kind of chemistry, if you will, right? Interpersonal chemistry instead of molecular chemistry. And yes, and I just love it. I think there's something really beautiful about really holding space for people to step into who they want to be, to face their fears and access, like, because the juice of what makes life worth living, in my opinion, is the quality of your interpersonal relationships. And as a scientist, I had received zero education in anything about that, of how to relate, how to communicate wisely, how to have good sex, like how to deal with any kind of interpersonal issues, how to handle my emotions or other people's emotions. I never had a single class in any of this stuff. All I ever studied was math, science. And so you can imagine in my personal life, it was very challenging. You know, and I was walking through the world being reflexively defensive and, you know, not knowing how to empathize or to actively listen or how to surrender and let go and open, and all of these beautiful things that bring magic and joy into life. So it's been such an honor to get to hold space for people to step into their pleasure and to get out of really difficult sexless marriages or recover confidence after a divorce, or just have that deeper connection they've always dreamed of with their partner, so that their life can feel meaningful and full of juice and joy. Yeah, I suppose that's the Cliff Notes version. Thank you for asking.
So thank you for giving us this amazing answer, because I really like I like the content and I like the structure as well, because I recognize a little hero's journey. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, well done. Great storytelling. That's perfect. And if we were to go into, by the way, I've just noticed that Pallavi has just joined us from India. Quite late in India right now. Yeah, I think it's 11 p.m. No, it's 7 p.m. No, it's like 9 p.m. for you. Exactly 9 p.m. for Pallavi, and it's 8 a.m. for you, Dr. Jessica, in California. Yep. Right. So we're spanning a lot of time zones. So Pallavi also always asks good questions. So we will look forward to your questions as well, Pallavi, in a few minutes. But
Fantastic.
Before we get to questions, Dr. Jessica, so you mentioned a parallel that you see between your career as an organic chemist, and actually a neuroscientist as well. I didn't know that you were also used to work as a neuroscientist in academia. Amazing. But it gets better and better the more I know you, the better it gets. And on the other side, you said that also in interpersonal relationships, especially, of course, in intimate relationships, there is chemistry as well. So there's a power here. And I love that you identified and you are mentioning yours. So leverage this parallel. Is this one of the reasons why you also call yourself a doctor in your business today, in your practice as an not intimacy coach, like what do you call it exactly?
Yeah, I call myself a shadow work and sexuality coach.
Yes, exactly. Yes. Yeah. So is it the parallel? It's this parallel that actually led you to the idea of calling yourself Dr. Jessica in your business as well?
It's actually not because of that. It's because getting a PhD in a hard science like chemistry, it's a very intense and challenging thing. And it requires a lot of, I'm trying to think of the words this morning, tenacity. You know, you have to be very focused. It's very hardcore. You have to be very agile. You know, in a chemistry lab, I'm dealing with a lot of toxic chemicals. Even I've done some reactions having to wear bulletproof gloves, reactions that might be explosive. You know, I'm crawling under things, fixing vacuum pumps. I'm hauling giant containers of liquid nitrogen around. I'm studying very esoteric concepts, or in a rarefied environment, we're talking about things that are about the essential nature of reality that very few other people in the world ever talk about. So it's a highly technical endeavor. It's also very physical, and it requires so much of a person to be incredibly detail oriented and to study very hard, to both practice chemistry by doing our experiments and to study the theory. It's not easy. It's complex. It's sophisticated. And so, you know, to go through something like that. And then as a postdoctoral fellow, I was making my own compounds from scratch in an organic chemistry lab. I was testing them in vivo in cells, and I was in vitro in cells. And I was also testing them in vivo in rodents. And it's very rare to have a person do that whole set of experiments. Usually you specialize either in the chemistry or in the molecular biology or in the rodent work, but I did all of them. And so I was running, you know, getting my own grants, writing my own grants, standing in front of panels of scientists, being evaluated on my work. And I had undergrads working under me. You know, I was teaching undergrads at Berkeley. And so, you know, to go through something like that, it's a big deal. And I think I want people to know that, you know, yes, on the surface, I look like I teach sexuality work, and people who work in the neo-tantra field do not often have degrees in a hard science, you know, and so it just says something else about what I've been through and the level of discernment and the level of my ability to be with you in a very deep and detail-oriented way. It's something different that I bring to this work. And also because Tantra is actually a very sophisticated philosophical and spiritual system, classical Tantra. I'm not talking about neo-Tantra here. And so I've done really deep studies for the past 7 years in classical Tantra, reading the actual old books, which were called Tantras, that were translated from the Sanskrit, to understand, like, what were these people actually talking about? Because I needed to know, what is this all based on? Because I'm a researcher by training. And so I researched the fundamentals of this field. And you don't see that among usual, like, sexuality coaches. So that's one of the reasons, just to say, hey, you know, like, I did do this really intensive work in a hard science. And that sets me apart from anyone else I've ever met in this field.
Oh my God, totally, absolutely. Because we often talk about unique pairings here. You know, it's a concept that I talk about when I take people through the process, find your breakthrough idea, but it's something that I talk on the show every now and then as well. And basically it's a pairing, like, it's a combination of two items that is not usual, number one, and number two, it is conducive to what you're actually doing in your business, right? So basically it's certainly not usual, as you mentioned, that for the sake of simplicity, let's just say a tantric teacher, right, is also a chemist, like a hard scientist like you. I bet there's really nobody. Yes. And not only is this right, and not only is this super unusual, but also it's very conducive to the work that you do, because I'm sure that you bring so much of your academic experience and your hard science experience into your coaching business today, to your clients, right?
Yes, I do. I mean, one of the things is, when I transitioned from working in science to living in a spiritual community, I was horrified, because what I found was just basically very, everywhere there was anti-science bias, and people had no understanding of what it's like to work in a lab and to study science and to do experiments. And so they were very anti-science. And there was a lot of spiritual bypassing going on, meaning they were trying to just pretend that they're, like, higher or elevated, and ignoring material reality, like ignoring, you know, how the biochemistry works, like our relationship with the material world. And so for me, it was shocking. And so I bring that grounded, relationship with reality and the material world and the body to, you know, my spiritual work, it was the thing that helped me not get lost in the spiritual bypassing that's rampant in the field, right? And so the other thing is that as a scientist, when I'm doing experiments in lab, you know, trying to advance to make a new molecule or to prove a hypothesis or whatever it is, most of the time your experiments fail. And so as a scientist, you have to be incredibly resilient. You know, you do an experiment and it fails. You can't go, oh, poor me, I'm terrible, I suck, like, and go into this black hole of self-pity and despair. You have to turn toward the thing that didn't work. You have to actually lean into the experiment that didn't work and ask, okay, what about this wasn't right? And get really granular and ask a lot of questions and get curious. You have to bring this endless sense of curiosity to your experiments and keep picking yourself up and trying over and over again. And that is exactly what Tantra is about. Well, not exactly, but in a big way, what a big part of Tantra is about, which is turning toward the things that we would normally run away from or be ashamed of, or turn toward the things that we might judge and get curious about it. So and it's about, whereas chemistry is about like outside external experimentation, Tantra is about your inner subjective experience. And that's the data point. Instead of getting external data points, you're looking at your own experience, and that's the data that you're taking. And you're getting really curious about who you are and how you function, and noticing, oh, do I have a tendency to judge and criticize myself, or to push away if I think I shouldn't be jealous or I shouldn't be angry? But what happens if we befriend those parts of ourselves and get curious about them? And this is what I learned of how to relate to myself through Tantra. It's like radical self-acceptance. And it is profoundly empowering and makes life so much more interesting. And so that's some of the ways I bring science into my work. Yeah.
Wow, this is so cool. Wow, you explained it all so beautifully. So by the way, is this the last, let's say the last discipline that you mentioned, is it called shadow work?
Yes.
Okay, great. Basically, when you accept the part, or even the parts of yourself that actually you try to run away from, or things that you run away from that you see that maybe externally, but you run away from, maybe are actually shadows that you have in yourself, right? Is it more or less the explanation?
Good work, JFab. So like the theory in psychology is that when we're growing up, there are parts of ourselves that we are told are not worthy, that it's not okay for us to be. And they can either be talents that we got shamed for or told we were too much, or it can be dark stuff. And so those things we just kind of hide from our awareness. We just pretend that those aren't part of who we are, but they are still in our psyche. They're just not in our conscious awareness. And so these shadows can harm us because, for example, if you see a beautiful woman or a woman who's always wearing a particular type of clothing and you always get really angry and really jealous about her, it could be like that trigger or that really big emotion in response to something relatively innocuous in the world is actually showing you a part of you that you have suppressed. So maybe you were told, you were shamed by your mother about wearing short skirts, so you never let yourself do that. But whenever you see another woman doing it, it makes you really jealous because that's a part of you that you're not in touch with, that you've put in the shadows. So that's one way to understand shadow work. I'm going to close a blind over here so the sun isn't on me. I'll be right back.
Of course, definitely. Wow, so cool that Dr. Jessica has the sun, because the sun is actually going down here in Zurich, right, Chris Rich? You're not too far away from Zurich. Anyway.
The sun is going down, definitely. Yeah, it's
going down. Yes, exactly. Dr. Jessica, the sun is going down here, so we're very happy that the sun is going up for you right now.
It's proof that the world is round.
Another proof is that it's nighttime in India, where Pallavi is. Yes, it's dark. Okay, yes. There's a question that I wanted to ask you about shadow work still. Yes, and so shadow work, of course, we can use it in our lives in general, but you also bring it into sexuality work, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because so much of our sexuality we have pushed into the shadows. We're pushed out of our conscious awareness. There's so much shame around it, you know.
Absolutely, totally. Especially in Italy, where I'm from. Okay,
Oh,
cool. Yes, Catholic country. Okay, so having said all of this, and thank you so much for explaining the parallel, or like the I don't know the word right now. I know the word, but it doesn't occur to me. But anyway, how similar hard science and tantra are under certain aspects. I love this. This leads me to this question, which is, Dr. Jessica, is this why you called your business Bliss Science?
you know, yes and no. So when the way I grew up, I didn't have any exposure to Eastern traditions of thought. And I was always taught that all these things were just wishy-washy or wishful thinking or trying to figure everything out with the mind. And I didn't realize, how sophisticated these systems of thought were that were developed in like Buddhism and Indian Tantra. So when I discovered what the tantrics were doing, because Tantra was really about working with energy in the body, working with mantras. It used to be called a mantra science, but trying to intentionally move your awareness and your energy and working with the body. It's a very sophisticated and systematic system approach for dealing with what's going on in ourselves. And in my opinion, what they were doing was they had figured out how to help people heal from trauma and how to help people bring our nervous system into the rest and relax and socialize, into the green zone, if you will, and get out of fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. They had figured out how to do this even before, like way before we knew anything about, the biology or the chemistry or the neuroscience of that stuff. And so while it's, Tantra isn't a science per se in the Western way, you can't do controlled experiments when you are the subject of your own experiment. But in a sense, it was a science. And it was about, like, a lot of Tantra talks about how the essence of who we are is consciousness and bliss. Yeah. And it's not the bliss of peak experience or of taking a drug. It's bliss in terms of like the peace that passes all understanding. So it's how do you access this space within yourself that is just conscious awareness, and its qualities are freedom and bliss.
Yes.
And so I was like, wow, they were really trying, very carefully over hundreds and thousands of years, just really deep study of the inner workings of the human body and the human mind so that we could all awaken to our essential nature as this abiding deep bliss. And I thought that was so beautiful. And for myself, as someone who has struggled with anxiety and depression and, been moving through the world in this very tight kind of goal-oriented way, it was really the antidote to all of those tendencies that allowed me to have a deeper experience of life and to find my own happiness that, can be abiding regardless of external circumstances. And so this is why I called my work Bliss Science. It's a bit of a hat tip to classical Tantra. Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, no, totally. Thank you for the explanation. It was very clear. Yes, and Bliss Science, to me, the first time that I heard it, it was like an oxymoron. It's like science is very hard. It's very hard. It's very, let's say, into the real world and physical and so on. And at the same time, bliss is something that is maybe not very tangible. It's something ethereal, if you can say so in English. I don't know, ethereal in Italian, it would be right. Yes, and I love oxymorons, and I think that they work particularly well when we talk about thought leadership and also business names of businesses. So well done.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. I know science is kind of known for being reductionistic and dividing things into their smaller and smaller parts, whereas our experiences of bliss are usually expansive and a bit mystical and mysterious, right? So how do those two fit together? How do we bring a scientific lens to the study of bliss? But that's what the tantrics were doing. in a sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. So Tantra, you said, comes from India. Let's go to India and let's ask Pallavi what her questions are, because you know what, Dr. Jessica, Pallavi is not only Indian, but she's very spiritual as well. She does a lot of energy work. And of course, she's interested in personal PR and the personal branding and all the good stuff that we discuss here on this channel. So Pallavi, welcome to the spotlight. Here is Dr. Jessica. She is at your disposal for any questions that you might have. I mean, decent questions, of course.
Yeah, thank
you
so
always
much.
say
Thank you so much. Jessica, yeah, I relate so much to your journey because I have something similar. So I have a corporate background. I'm totally a science, a geeky kind of a person. So I am an engineer, then I did my MBA, and then I have a 10 years corporate experience. And then I got involved in, I don't know if you've heard of Six Sigma in data analysis. So so that's a different field, but very much, very hard-grained kind of science. So Six Sigma black belt and master black belt, and I had a very good, profile and a career. People dream for it. And then I felt like, I don't know what I'm doing. My paychecks come in and I'm very externally very happy and all of that. But internally, I was like so much in pain and all of that. And that took me to a journey of healing myself and healing in layers. I'm still healing. And in the process also, I set up this, and I happen to somehow explore energy healing, a particular kind called pranic healing. I don't know if you're aware of that or heard of. So that's my journey. So I was just trying to relate to yours. You come from such a rich background. But what the main key point was, at least you found a bridge or something which is merging your past experience and current in terms of chemistry. That's what you mentioned. So for me, I was just thinking like, what is that merging point, or how can I bring two things together? So yeah, that was my question was like, how did you merge these two things? Was it along your journey, like when you were doing one thing, or after building up each block in your business, did that happen, or was it like, okay, this is what I have to do, and that's how you merge both of these things together?
Yeah, it's a good question. I don't try too hard to really merge them because they are different, science and, coaching people. But I do believe that the basic attitude of tenacity and detail orientation and being an experimentalist who's always researching and investigating things, that attitude that I've practiced so much as a scientist, I bring that to my coaching work. But I will say that something that's very interesting is that as a chemist, an organic chemist, where you're synthesizing molecules, you do a lot of what's called electron pushing, where you're finding the compounds that have electrons that need to make a bond, and you're pushing them into compounds that want to be bonded to. And one of the principles, the way subatomic particles work is there's electrons, neutrons, protons, and the electrons are negatively charged and the protons are positively charged. Of course, the neutrons are neutral. And so they're attracted. The negative and the positive charges attract. That's part of what holds, atoms together. But, and in Tantra, in Neo-Tantra anyway, there's this idea of polarity work, which is that in a relationship, in order to create attraction between two people over the long term, you need to hold the poles of masculine and feminine. And there's a sense that one is charged a certain way and the other is charged the opposite way. And so opposites attract, and that's what holds the unit together. So there's this same understanding of polarity and attraction of opposites in like chemistry and in interpersonal chemistry, which I just find endlessly hilarious and interesting. And in Tantra, there's also the principle that as above, so below. I mean, in many spiritual systems, there is this across the world, but that the macrocosm mirrors the microcosm. We see this in fractals, but I think that we also see this, that our fundamental particles are held together by this polarized chemistry, and our interpersonal relationships are also, in a sense, held together by playing with polarity, if you want to choose to run your relationship that way. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but those are my thoughts on it so far.
No, that makes sense actually. And how do you use this whatever background that you had to propel your current business? Like, how do you justify like, okay, I had 10, 50. I'm asking this because even I have that same question within. So how do you justify 10 years, 20 years, 15 years of your working in hardcore science and coming to, it's like left brain to right brain, how do you justify that part? I mean, how do you use that to fuel your current business?
Totally. So one of the ways that I use it is I actually specialize in working with men. So, okay, my journey was to go from being really stuck in my masculine and trying to act like a man in order to be respected as a scientist to becoming like turning toward my emotions and accepting and becoming whole, being able to play on this whole energetic range within myself from masculine to feminine and having emotional intelligence, but also having academic intelligence. And I specialize in working with men and scientists and CEOs and people who are really stuck, who are just only playing on the masculine energetic pole and relating to people who were like me, who are scientists, who are just stuck in their head, disconnected from the body, and saying, hey, this was my journey. I know what that's like. Let me help you open. For me, I was afraid of the embodied side of life or the emotion. I thought those were weak or a distraction to the real work of like making more money and achieving more success and only going up. And I thought you have to be the same every day or you're weak and unreliable, so not honoring cycles of the female body or cycles of life. And so I reach out a hand across this spiritual scientific divide and I say to people, hey, do you want to have a fuller experience of life? Do you want to have more agility to play across the whole energetic spectrum? Be more powerful and happier while you succeed more too. Well, that's how I do that.
Wow, beautiful.
How could you do that too? For example, Pallavi, do you think that maybe you can work with?
I'm going to copy this. I'm going to copy
Do it. Run with it.
She's just mirroring the current obstacles I have. She's just mirroring and she's just giving me those answers. And those are like tips, clues for my success.
Exactly. So your ideal clients could be engineers. Like you used to be an engineer. Yeah, exactly. There are so many engineers in India, by the way, but you can work globally anyway because you work online, right? Yes.
Yeah. And I also have that so much of masculine thing in me. So I also want that power and, all of that. So now when she answered that, I know I need to build that feminine side of me and, so it's like a lot of good tips for me. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It's a pleasure to meet you and have this conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. That is awesome. If you girls want to connect later, you will be, I will tag you both in this post. I mean, Dr. Jessica is going to be tagged anyway, and Pallavi, if you want, I can tag you too. So then Dr. Jessica can find you, or the other way around. I don't know. If somebody wants to connect, they can always connect these days all over the world. So Pallavi, I will say bye for now. And I will take Chris Rich into the spotlight. Dr. Jessica, are you ready for Chris Rich's question? We never know what question he will ask, but usually
I am ready.
Yeah, ready?
Thank you so much, JFAB. I'm really honored to have the privilege to talk to you now, Dr. Jessica, ask some questions. And first to you, JFAB. Now this entire Facebook group and your events are just leveling up to another level. So I absolutely didn't expect this, what's now going on here. I never made so many notes and I was so inspired by someone like with these 45 minutes now. And I think when you start to learn something new or you hear something for the first time, it's always the question about the starting point. What does someone already know? Therefore, before I ask my prepared questions, just a few words about me and this experience in this direction where you are a top expert. Many years ago, I attended a 2-day Tantra workshop course where it was mainly about men learning what women really need and what is possible from an experience perspective in this direction for women, that we men with our different needs and experiences and feelings and ways we approach such sexual situations better get this understanding from this other female direction. So it is really a complete eye-opener for me. And I met there my girlfriend these days, and spent then several months with her. And she was working some kind in a direction of a certain sexual therapist. So from her, I continued then this learning journey. But nevertheless, also with all these experiences and the events we went and the people we met, I still have not really a clue what you were talking about and how far you went, especially because of your combination approach of the emotional and the scientific combination. Also, a key element of my work is we need to combine the right elements, the right knowledge areas. This brings us forward. It's not just a focus on a single topic, but that may be later. So one first question from my side would be, what is the relevance of music within your work? Is this more shut up the music, we focus on the touching, the feeling, the thoughts, the calming down to whatever, or has music, a specific music style, a certain relevance for your work?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for this, honest and helpful background. And I really salute you for your own journey in this world. And thank you for your reflections on what you've learned today. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. No one's ever asked me that before. But, I'm so grateful to all the musicians of the world. They really bring the magic. They're tapped into this deeper rhythm of the heartbeat and just the expansion and contraction, this underlying fundamental pulsation of all of life that Tantra talks so much about, this expansion, contraction. And, for people who are light chasers or spiritual bypassing, they think that contraction is bad, but it's actually essential for then expanding again. Anyway, that's a side note. So when we're working with things that bring up fear or wounds that need healing, or even if we're just wanting to settle into our body, I use music all the time in my work. I find it to be an essential, and it's one of the most fun components of what I do, is finding really beautiful music that vibrates at different levels of consciousness. You could say, like, what does unconditional love music sound like? Or what does fire music sound like? Or, seductive music, or earthy, primal music. But, I find it's essential to helping someone relax, to helping a nervous system smooth down and come into the rest and relax. That's the short answer. Does that answer your question?
This answers my question. I expected something in this direction. I quickly like to share that the social music network I'm building up is the idea of connecting people based on their artistic interests, because I think this is an opening door that people are then ready for meaningful deep diving conversations and learning more about themselves and being more people open for work like you offer. And in my journey to better understand human beings and myself, I explored a lot about spiral dynamics, 9 levels of value systems, and the Reese motivation profile. Have you heard from these 2 scientific areas? Has this some relevance with your work, or has a certain influence or a relevance or a general interest from your side for these 2 areas?
I've heard of the spiral dynamics, but I haven't studied either of those systems, so I wouldn't be able to say.
So just, if you like, I would explain you for free something in this direction, because I think this would make your service even more valuable, maybe when you would implement certain elements from that. And the last question would be, when someone is deciding, yes, I would like to deep dive into more satisfaction from this private aspect, from these private experiences, and go on this journey. I started to read a Facebook post from you before, and then I realized, oh, okay, this is a completely different level. Now I know a little bit in which direction this might go. Reading what you communicate online, listening to you, but then the next level, the next step, what would you advise that someone, for example, with my experience or also with a lower experience, could really benefit from your services and offers? And what would that exactly mean when someone starts this journey with you?
So you're asking what would be the next step for someone to, okay. Well, you can follow me for free on Instagram at bliss.science. I have a subscription club. It's a members only club that includes a Facebook group where I answer all of your questions on sex, love, and relationships. I answer them personally, and it's $10 a month. So all of these links are at the link in my bio in my Instagram profile, for example. Also, you can follow I'm Jessica Ananya Harvey on Facebook. Just follow my personal page.
How large is this Facebook group with the $10 a month? How many people
are
in
right
there?
Now there are about 500 people. I keep it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Crazy. So you get an income of $5,000 just by running this Facebook group. I'm really impressed.
So, it's not a group that I'm planning to keep big. I want it to keep it small, of people who really want to be there, so that it's a safer space to ask really vulnerable questions and get real answers. And we have discussions where members post really interesting shares, and then I have everyone in the group commenting, and they're not giving advice. They're not telling the person what to do. They're just empathizing or sharing their story. It's a space to practice relating in a very different way. It's not the usual drive by comment or harassment or things like this that you get on the internet. It's a very carefully curated space.
That's great.
It's special. Amazing. And then from there, I have on-demand products you can get from my website. I have 90-minute intensives you can purchase. I have mini courses you can purchase. And then you can always do one-on-one coaching with me or one of my group programs. I run a men's sex mastermind every year. Right now, I'm running a sexual confidence course for men addressing performance anxiety. In the spring, I'm collaborating with a friend. I hope to run a course on non-ejaculatory orgasms for men, which is one of my favorite topics. And then I want to run a tantric mentality course, which is more along the lines of more classical understanding of this field, not just the neo-tantric sexuality. So yeah, there's anything from free to my subscription to my mini courses to one-on-one work with me. Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so
much
for sharing. You're offering something great. And I think the world needs more people like you who help on this awakening journey we are on, and should proceed a bit faster, that we have more mindset alignment and discover what it really means to be a human being.
Well, thank you so much. I mean, it's been such an honor to hold space for people in their transformation. People come to me with really difficult things that they're facing, and every time I just feel like, wow, I really am honored by their trust and to get to be the person that holds that space. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris, for your well thought questions. Did you do research before this live? No,
I actually didn't do any research, and it is just a very familiar topic for me. So by thinking very fast, as I usually do, is it possible to prepare such introduction information and questions? And yeah, I mean, I could talk for hours about these topics, and it is just one area that I deep dive explored in my life. At the moment, this is not my business, not my main topic, but it is really fully present and aware when someone starts to talk about that, and I know quite well what it is about, but still I think I could learn from you quite a lot. Therefore, I will see what I can see online, or maybe even join your amazing group.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
There are many opportunities to work with Dr. Jessica. Amazing. Okay. Bye, Chris Rich. Bye only from the spotlight, not from the Zoom. Pallavi, do you have any more questions? Has anything occurred to you in the last 15 minutes?
Yes, I wanted to ask Dr. Jessica, like you have this doctor title. So when it comes to health and healing and wellness, so I have observed, my personal observation is Dr. Bruce Lipton, Dr. Deepak Chopra, I mean, everybody who is a doctor or a scientist has a scientist background. They get an upper hand, or when they explain things related to health, healing, skeleton and the human body anatomy and all of that, the weights, I mean, they have a different, they get that space, and they don't have, I mean, they just open their mouth and people believe it. For you it will be equally a little more easier because you have the doctor thing with you. For me, I was just thinking, because I come from an engineering background and a different background, so when I talk about it, though I talk with sense and with science and all of the background and with good research, but at times I feel the